Good morning, everyone. Thank God we're alive. Thank God we're still in this world. And thank God that we have eyes and, Baruch Hashem, ears and nose. We're healthy and we have the ability to sit and learn. We're interested in learning about God. So here we have charity. Let's start the day off with charity because everything we have is God's charity to us. So we should give to others as God has given to us. Here we go. Charity. Charity saves from all bad things and it brings all good things. And by the way, you can make a condition. You can give charity. Say, I'm giving charity on the condition that somebody gets better, which is a good idea. I'm giving charity on the condition that Chaya Mushka Bat Bacha Bivit is healthy and well, and also that Levi Ben Fege as well. Ready? Let's go. And so we're beginning now learning about a very interesting section of the Talmud in Baba Metzia. Baba Metzia has all these amazing stories about these different rabbis. And we're going to learn something about these rabbis. Now, in interesting, one of the main features, the essence of Judaism is the rabbis. The rabbis. Without the rabbis, then anything goes, as Christianity proved. One, it says that the founder of that religion is suffering in hell. I don't want to say exactly what's happening to him, but anyway, you can read yourself. Because he taught everyone to hate the rabbis. That's the big sin of that religion, is to teaching to hate the rabbis. So as you don't like the rabbis or reject them, so all of the sentences in the Torah can be translated and interpreted however you want to, until the point where you get to idolatry, which that's what that religion is. On the other hand, who were these rabbis? Why should we listen to them? So it says these rabbis called the Pharisees, and then afterwards that was called the Tanaim and the Amoraim. They had the power to do amazing miracles. They could even enliven the dead. We'll learn about that. Where do they get their power to enliven the dead? How can it be? So again, we have to remember one basic principle of Judaism, and that is this physical world is more important than all the upper worlds, more important to God. What happens here is closer to God than any of the upper spiritual levels that there are. As impossible as that seems to be, but it's true. And that's the point of Judaism, that the heavens are very great, they're very amazing, and that they're spiritual and they're infinite. Oh, here we go. But what happens in this physical world is what really interests God, this physical world. And even more, what happens in this physical world is really infinite. Things in this world that go against the Torah, so they're temporal. But in fact, this world is infinite. I know we've mentioned this so many times before, but it's worthwhile mentioning it again. Before God created this world, there was no such thing as time. When God created the world, he created time. So to speak, there was nothing before this world. There was nothing before the world. 5,700 years ago, what is that, 85 years ago, when God created the world, that was reality. That's not within time. And what we perceive as time is not really temporal. It's really opportunities, one after the other, to do what God wants. And that makes everything, reveals God's infinity in the physical world. So, of course, this is totally incomprehensible. This makes no sense. But on the other hand, nothing really makes any sense when it comes down to how do we exist? Right? Like the scientists say, how did the world begin? So it began with the Big Bang. Where did the Big Bang come from? A black hole. Where did the black hole come from? What's keeping everything going? Where did everything start? Right? So you can say one of two things: either some force is doing it, or that the original source, the prime mover, or you can say it just always was like that. It just never would. Saying that doesn't make any sense. At least it's certainly not scientific to say that. Okay, so I mean, we're not trying to prove God's existence over here because the point of the creating the world is that you can't prove God's existence, and then when you do, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't change people at all. The Jewish people, they all saw God at Mount Sinai, they saw the miracles, and they worshiped the golden calf. They went exactly opposite. So human nature leads you to the golden calf, leads you to all these other religions. And we're talking about something above nature, and that's what these rabbis were. That's what the great rabbis were. They were above nature. They were totally connected to the Creator all the time. And they knew how important the Torah is. The Torah is not just a book. There you go, David. It's just a book to get you into heaven, because heaven is not the goal. Heaven is not the goal. The goal is to make this world infinitely holy. So let's go. Ready? Here we go. So we have a surprising Gemara. What does the Gemara say? The Gemara says like this. In the Gemara, here we go. In the Gemara in Baba Metzia, Perek, the chapter which is called Hapoalim. It's in Baba Metzia. It's like in period, what do I say? 86 something like that. 86. There's an argument in the Metifta de Rakia, in the heavenly court. Right. Now I'm the heavenly court. So the heavenly court is composed of rabbis that have passed away, and it's also composed of different souls and different. Anyway, it's heavenly court. It's not physical. Im Baheret Kodemis l'Sa'ar Lavan Tamei, Im Sa'ar Lavan Kodem. One second. L'Baheret Tahor. Okay, so there's a law. We'll learn about this week's Torah portion. This Torah portion. This Torah portion is Tazria. So even though it starts off really very positively, it talks about when a woman gives birth to a son, gives birth to a daughter, but in the continuation, it talks about this terrible disease, which is not really, it's not a contagious disease. It's a spiritual sign that appears on someone, a spiritual, what do you call it, a blight or something that comes on a person, mainly for speaking disparagingly about others, lashon hora. However, it is that it's a disease, and there's all sorts of details about what exactly constitutes this disease. If a person breaks out like in a rash all over his body, or his limbs start falling off or something, that's not the disease. That's not the disease. We translate it in the English, because there's lack of a better word. They translate it leprosy, but it's not leprosy. It's not leprosy. It's some sort of a discoloration of the skin. Discoloration of the skin. Except for that, it doesn't have any necessarily, physical. Maybe the person feels a little bit weaker, or maybe feels unhappy, depressed. But the main thing is there's signs on the skin which shows this person is impure. But the impurity is very, very great. A person can't go into the temple. It's the same thing as impurity of death. So it says a person that suddenly he has on his skin, here we go, let's go back to the beginning. He has on his skin a white blotch here, and then there comes a hair on it. So it says, if there's a white blotch on it, and then there appears a black hair in the middle of this white discoloration of the skin, then is impure. Im sa'ar lavan, right? And I'm sorry, not black hair, white hair. I'm sorry, white hair. If there is a white hair first, the hair appears first, and then the discoloration of the skin comes afterwards, then that person is not impure. Tahor. Then he's regular, normal. What if it's a doubt? A person wakes up in the morning and he sees that he has a blotch with a white hair in it. Doesn't know which came first. So there's an argument in heaven, in the heavenly court. HaKodesh Baruch Hu, God says Tahor. God, now of course this is just an aspect of God. It's called the HaKodesh Baruch Hu. We'll explain what this is. The Holy One, blessed be He. He says, Tor, you wake up in the morning, you have a blotch on your arm, whatever it is, and there's a white hair in it. You don't know which one came first. A doubt makes you, okay, we're lenient. We're lenient, says God. That's it, right? God, that's what God says. But everyone, all the souls in the holy heavenly court, Omer, they say Tameh. Omri, this says in the Talmud, Man and Nochach, who's going to make the decision? Who's going to decide? Nochach Rabba Bar Nachmani. Rabba Bar Nachmani, he should decide. The Omer, because it said, Rabba Bar Nachmani, Ani Yachid Ben Egoim, because Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he said, I am unique, I am the ultimate opinion in Negaim, in this leprosy, in this tzorat. Ani Yachid Ba'olot, and I am special in Olot. In other words, he had insight into these laws of impurity that nobody else had. What is this? So they said, okay, but what are we going to do? He's alive. So they said, well, let's bring him to heaven. Let's kill him. Bring him to heaven. So it's a long story. It's a very interesting over there. So as his soul goes out of his body, that's what it says over there. His soul goes out of his body, and he says, tahor, tahor. Tahor. The law is that it's tahor. It's, if there's a doubt, then the opinion goes according to what God says. Huh? Well, the Gemara in Masechet Nazir, Perish explains that the reason, the Omer, Kra, that it says Lataro Olatamo, the reason is because it says Lataro Olatamo. It says that in blemishes of the skin, it says these are the laws of blemishes of the skin, to be pure or to be impure. Hoyle, since Patach Boba Katuv, because this Torah begins with the word pure, so therefore Rabba Bar Nachmani said that the Torah is indicating that if there's a doubt, that you should say that it's pure. Pure is more important, is dominant on impure. Good? Interesting story. Sorach Laban says the Rebbe, okay, now let's understand this whole weird story. Okay, so what do we see first of all? We see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, now who is God? What is God? What is God? Let's just take the basic of what God is God is creating everybody. If you're being created, if you're watching this program, you're watching this class, then you're being created. And if you're not watching the class, you're also being created. God creates everything. And he creates the screen you're watching, and he creates the power of consciousness. God is creating everything constantly. And God is creating time. God is creating reality. He's creating everything is God is created by God. Everything. And everything is being created by God for a purpose. That purpose is the Torah. God's also creating the Torah. Same God, only one God. And the reason that God is creating the world is for the sake of the Torah. In other words, the Torah is the blueprint of the world. That's what's really the truth of the world. Just like scientists try to figure out, what is propulsion, what is gravity, what is this, how does it work? They come to Newton's theories, and then afterwards came the uncertainty principle, and this, and the relativity, and things, and not the subatomic particles, and this, and that. Little by little, they try to understand what nature is, what is the truth behind nature. Okay, science is not exactly like the Torah. The science is just what's practical. The Torah is not talking about what's practical. The Torah is talking about what's true. Even though it's not practical to be a Jew, right? But Jews have held out, even though it's not very practical. We've been hated, etc., etc. Right? But it's true. So it's true that people hold on to the truth, which is not the case. Science, right? Science, the ideas that were accepted by science even 100 years ago, that's out the window. Anything which is more practical, you have to accept it. So the Torah, but one good thing what's similar about both of them is both are scientists, and the rabbis are trying to discover what is the world, what's reality. The sciences are trying to figure out what's reality from the viewpoint of what's practical, and the rabbis are trying to look at reality from the time, what does the Torah say? What's true? Okay, and that's what the Tanaim and the Amorim, that's what the great rabbis of the Talmud, That's what they were. The Tanaim, they were first. They were first, and then there was the Amoraim. Amoraim came, I don't know, 200 years, whatever, after the Amoraim. After the Tanaim were first. There were people like Hillel and Shammai and Rabbi Akiva and these great people, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, it says. And the Amoraim, they came afterwards, Abaya and Rabbah. There was generations of them. In any case, those were the ones who compiled the Talmud. These people had they say, so on Amoraim, we saw that these Tanaim and Amoraim, they could do amazing miracles. Shoya Yochalim Lasot, friends like Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. It says in the Talmud of Chulin, he split the sea. It says, Ganai Nara Chaluk. He actually split the sea like Moses did. Miyamecha. Umiyad Nitkayim. He had to come to this river and he split the river and he walked across. That he alone could do Masha Be'it Asef. Yachad Moshe, which Moses and all of the Jewish people, 600,000 Jews, were able to do splitting the Yam Suf. He could do it alone. Pinchas ben Yair. V'chein also Omruz Zutra the Bechu. It says later on that it's a story by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was the last one of the Tanaim, and he used to visit every day. Whenever he used to visit regularly, Antoninus, the king, because the king was very enamored of it. It's a long story that they switched. His mother nursed Antoninus, and Antoninus' mother nursed him. In any case, they were best friends, and they used to visit. But Antoninus did not want anybody to know that they were visiting. So Antoninus would have his guards escort Rebbe and his pupils, and a few of his pupils every day, and then he would kill the guards. He would have the guards killed so that they wouldn't tell anybody. And he trusted Rebbe and his pupils not to tell anyone. He would have the guards killed. And once the pupils didn't know that his guards were killed. Once one of the pupils went outside to go to the bathroom and he saw one of these guards dead. So he thought, whoa, they're going to accuse us. So he brought him back to life. So when Antoninus saw the guard was still alive, so he said, what's this? How could it possibly be? And his assassins said, we killed the guy. I don't know what happened. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, who did this? And one of his pupils said, I did it. I brought him back to life. I was afraid. And Antoninus said, oh, I see that the smallest of you has the ability to raise the dead. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he was the last. He was in the end of the Tanaim. And his pupils, they were the end of the Tanaim. After him came the Amoraim. That was a lower level of wisdom. So he said, even the smallest of you has the ability to raise the dead. Here we got a whole big religion based on some guy that they claim he rose the dead here. Okay. How did they merit these abilities to split the sea and to raise the dead? How could they do it? By means of learning the Torah. We have to explain first, Perish Kriyas Shem Kodesh Baruch Hu. Let's explain this idea of who is the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay, so now we're going to explain several things. Number one, we have this weird argument between the heavenly court and God, and they call Rabbi Bar Nachmani, and Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he decided like God. By the way, in another place it says that the Maimonides, he decides like the rabbis. He decides against God and against this Talmud. Okay, anyway, the point is they called somebody to decide this law. Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he could decide laws that were not in the ability of the heavenly court and even God to understand. HaKodesh, the Holy One, blessed be He. And we said, okay, so who are these people? How are these Amoraim and the Tanaim that they could? And again, the Tanaim, they were the ones that are disparagingly called the Pharisees, right? You look up in an English dictionary and say a pharisaical statement is like a statement which is like what is it? Trick. It's what do they call it? The misleading or something like that. Misleading, unfaithful. That's what we got. That's what type of world we're living in. So that's the Kodesh Baruch Hu. What is this? God is called the Holy One, blessed be He. What is this name of God? So I'm sure we all know, we've learned in these classes. Oh, here we go. Good morning. We've learned in these classes that God has a lot of names. God has a lot of names. And the names of God, they refer to different aspects of God. And just to return back to this topic again, that's called the secret of the 10 sphirot, the secret of the 10, how do you call it, the aspects of God's personality, 10 sphirot. And it says the secret of the 10 sphirot, the 10 aspects of God's personality, power, love, beauty, it says wisdom. That's the secret of faith. Because if you don't believe that God has a personality, it means that God is too far away from the world to even care. It's something like what the Hindus have, right? The Hindus have this God, but he's with us like Spinoza and these guys, right? The God is too far away. There is this power, but it's like this amorphous sort of, how do you say, infinite power that doesn't care about anything, doesn't have commandments, it's just there, right? It's just there. So if you say that God doesn't have any aspects to his personality, it means that God doesn't care about the world. He doesn't care. He hasn't got any, can't touch him. It's just too, what do you call it? Above the spiritual, if you want to call it, or super spiritual, something, I don't know. But we say, no, it's not so. That in fact, the matter is that God has a personality, and that's one of the meanings man is created in God's image. That God has a personality. But on the other hand, God's personality is as infinite as God is. So we're talking about things we don't understand, but it's true. Here, there's the world, and we say God cares about the world, and God did take the Jews out of it, did give them the Torah. God cares about every letter of the Torah. God cares about every deed we do in this world. God reacts to what we do in the world. So that's these different names of God. These are big mysteries, which don't think that I'm privy to these mysteries. But on the other hand, we're learning, that's what we're learning about. We want to learn about God. So these are aspects of God. So one of the aspects of God is that God is called the Holy One, blessed be He. Shekaru Bo, that the rabbis called Habore Yisprech, the Creator, they call God by the name of the Holy One, blessed be He. And that's what we learned in the beginning. There was an argument in heaven between the Holy One, blessed be He, and the heavenly court about these laws of impurity. If a white hair comes before a discoloration, then it's pure. The person is not impure. He's pure. He's not tamei, impure. If the discoloration comes before the hair, then he's impure. If there's a doubt, then there's an argument. That's what there's argument. So it said, God said he's pure. The heavenly court said he is impure. They called Rabbi Bar Nachmani from the world. They called him, and he decided like God. Okay. So we're saying, who is this Rabbi Bar Nachmani? How can rabbis decide in this world? They can tip the scales and decide with God, against God. What's going on? The Indian is like this. Okay, now let's understand what is it, who were the participants in this argument? The Holy One, blessed be He, against the holy heavenly court. What is a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and what is the Metifta D'Rukiya, the court in heaven? The Indian is the Holy One, blessed be. What is holy? Holy is this aspect which is called Keter. Now, Keter is one of the 10 Sfirot. Sometimes it's counted and sometimes Dat is counted. Okay, but Keter is it's an aspect of God's personality. Even though, I'm going to skip most of the parentheses. Even though, sometimes, Bechinet Tiferet of Atzilut is called Kodesh, is called holy. Okay, now, we're talking about God here, right? So God is not a person. God is not a thing. Let's even say a little more. How do you say? What was? There's a good word for it. Surprisingly, that's not the word I wanted. Anyway, the God, it doesn't exist. God creates existence. God creates all existence. God is his existence is unlike any other existence that we could possibly imagine. All existence comes from God. That's how the Maimonides starts off. That all existence that exists, spiritual, physical, it all comes from God. On the other hand, God cares about everything. So that what we call God holy means that, so to speak, he's above the whole entire existence. That's the level of the crown. Keter, that's above the 10 sphirot. It's above the 10 sphirot. Sometimes it's counted as one, sometimes it's not counted. But Keter is what's above everything. That's holy. It's above. That's why the angels are saying, holy, holy, holy. They're burning up God. Sometimes we see the Tiferet of Atzilut is called holy. Why? Because Atzilut is the highest. There's 4 worlds and there's 10 sphirot. 4 worlds are really 4 dimensions of reality. And the 10 sphirot, those are the 10 aspects of God which are found in every dimension of reality. So in the world, the highest of these 4 dimensions is called Atzilut. Atzilut. And there's 10 aspects of God in Atzilut. Below that is the world of Bria. That's like the world of the souls, it says. There's 10 aspects of God in Bria. Then there's 10 aspects of God in the world below that called Yetzirah. And then there's 10 aspects of God in the world, the dimension below that, which is called Asiya. Okay, there are big Kabbalists that reveal this. It began really with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the Zohar, which that's about 1,800 years ago, and something like that. And the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, he described it even more. Arizal was about 400 years ago. Anyway, there's this 4 worlds of Atzil. This is all Kabbalah stuff, but we're not interested in the Kabbalah part of it. We're interested in how God relates to this world. God is infinite. The world is finite. The spiritual worlds which are between are sort of finite because they're limited in some spiritual ways. They're defined. But on the other hand, they're infinite compared to the worlds which are below them, especially this world. Okay. So the whole Kodesh means above everything. A level of reality which is above, that's called God's crown. Sometimes it's called the Tiferet, the middle pillar, the beauty of the world of Atzilut. And the reason why sometimes Atzilut is called holy, that Tiferet is called holy, the beauty is one of the 10 sphirot of Atzilut is called holy. And sometimes it's Keter, the crown, which is above everything, is because they're connected. This middle pillar is connected. Tiferet is the middle pillar, is connected to the crown. Okay, so it says Umitiferet the Zeranpin, and from Tiferet, which is the emotions of God, there comes a crown to Nuk for the lowest aspect of Atzilut. Hainu ki Tiferet shayach lebechinet Keter. Okay, here we go. Keter, nevertheless, Keter, this level of Keter is called holy. That's what we're interested in. Keter is called holy. Crown. Hainu shehu bechinet kodesh umuvdal. It is holy and removed above from the whole creation. That's what I meant when I said that God does not exist. God creates all existence. That's this aspect of Keter, the crown. It's above everything. Okay, how is it that if it's above everything, it comes down below it? So in this Keter, there's also 10 sphirot. And the working of this is that's what it means in the Torah, in the Bible, when it says that God created the world from his speech, God's speech. Now, God doesn't have teeth or a tongue or something. You can't go up in heaven and look and see God's tonsils or something. And when it says God's speech, it's talking about the Malchut, the lowest aspect of this world of Atzilut. Something, anyway, that's what they. And where does it come from, this ability of God to speak and come into the world? The power comes from what's called God's crown. Sometimes the idea of crown is the idea of God's will. It's above all the other aspects of personality. Okay, man is created in God's image, so we can sort of extrapolate from ourselves what's being talked about. So just to make a reset over here, we know for sure that God exists. That's what Judaism says. How do we know? Faith. We know for sure that God exists. Faith. Even after God took the Jews out of Egypt and he gave them Torah and he gave them the Torah and they shook them up, still they had to have faith. Without faith, they worshiped the golden calf. They went exactly against what God said. Right? Exactly against what God said. You have to have faith. But with faith, you can be sure that there's a creator and that the creator cares and etc. Now, how this works, we're explaining. That's what we're explaining. So that's what God is called the Holy One, blessed be He. That which God is holy means He's above the whole creation. He's above the spiritual. That's called God's crown. He just has a will to make the world. The world, it doesn't exist yet, so to speak. There's no time, there's no space, there's no vacuum, there's no being, there's no anything. That's called God's crown. That's the Holy One. What's blessed be He, Baruch? Blessed, this is what's below God's crown. This is what's called Chachma. Chachma is the highest of the 10 Sfirot. Reshit Agila, the beginning of revelation. Okay, so we have, like I said, sometimes crown is counted as one of the 10 Sfirot, and sometimes it's not. Here the Rebbe is going according to crown is not counted as one of the 10 Sfirot. That's above all of God's personality. That's the crown. That's what's God's called holy, the Holy One. And blessed be He is how God starts to come down into the world to create the world and care about the world. And that's the Torah, and that's all these different other aspects which come in below, which express God, so to speak. So Nimsa, so it comes out that Kodesh, when we say that God is holy, this is what's called Sovev Kolamim. There's a lot of Kabbalistic terms, but it's worthwhile. We'll learn what these mean. Sovev Kolamim, how God, what's called surrounds all existence. That's the Holy One. And Baruch, blessed be He, this is how God fills all existence. So that which we say that God is Sovev Kolamim, He surrounds all the worlds. This is, so to speak, that God does not exist, that God creates all existence. God is above all existence. God is infinitely real in a way that cannot possibly be in any way described or defined. That's Sovev Kolamim, how God surrounds the world. He surrounds all, defies all definition. Sovev Kolamim. And that which called God, that's God being holy, the Holy One. And blessed be He is how God creates the world. And He creates the world from nothing, from this infinite reality that God has. And so from that comes articulation. God can create the world. Okay, spiritual worlds too. Alken, therefore, Korah Chazal, therefore God is called by the name, the Holy One, blessed be He. This explains a good term. Why? Because it explains that on one hand, God is here, God is everywhere, God is creating us, He cares about us, He's close to us. On the other hand, that God is God. God is not a person, He's not a, a mythological figure, that sits on a big throne or something like that. On the other hand, God does sit on a big throne. God says that Isaiah saw, that Ezekiel saw, sitting on a throne. What's going on? So that's how God relates to the world. But Sovev Kolamim, this is God. God is not relating to the world. You can't possibly imagine what God is. Okay, so what's joining these two together? We'll find that. That's what we're going to find out. That's what the Torah does. The Torah joins them together. Hine. B'tevas Baruch, in the word that God is blessed. The Holy One, blessed be He. The word Baruch, that He's blessed, what do we say? How God creates the world, how God comes into the world. The word blessed, there's another meaning. There's two meanings. One of them is from, like it says, Hamelech Shlomo Baruch, that the King Solomon was blessed. Hapereshu nitborech, that he was blessed. What does it mean? Shemekabel habracha, that he received blessing. Ad shenasa baruch, he becomes a blessed one. He was blessed, right? You have in the world, people are blessed with a sense of music. They're blessed with a sense of of a good humor. There's some people are blessed with beauty, with long life. You're blessed with health. You're blessed. You receive a blessing. That's one meaning. The other one meaning in Baruch means Hainu Shehu Baruch. What does it mean? Shehu Makor, that he is the source of blessings. That's God. Baruch Hu. Shemavorach, that God is able to bless. He gives blessings, not that he is receiving blessings. Like it says, okay, another place. Shnei Perushim Emes. One meaning of the word blessed means that you are blessed. And the other one means blessed means that you give blessings. The source of blessings. Even though that it explains that Chachma is called Boruch, we said before. What do we say? Keter is Kodesh, the Holy One, and Chachma, which is the top of the 10 Sfirot, that's already coming into the world. That's what's called Boruch, like it says in Pri Etz Chaim. Pri Etz Chaim was a book written by the Arizal. That Yesod Abba is called Boruch. It says that Yesod Abba is Chachma, and Yesod is the aspect of how Chachma can come into the world. That's called Boruch. It's blessed. It blesses. But nevertheless, it's also called Malchut Boruch, but also the lowest of the 10 Sfirot. Chachma is the highest of the 10 Sfirot. Sometimes Malchut is called Boruch. Why? Ze'enyan Amelech Shlomo Boruch. So sometimes the aspect of God's kingship that receives blessing, and the aspect of God's wisdom that gives blessing. Okay. This is like the first explanation of Boruch Hainu, Shehu mitborech umekabel. The lowest aspect of godliness, where we said God's malchut, the lowest, that's like God's speech. The power of speech, it receives from all of the sfirot that are above it. It receives the blessing which is drawn down from above. That from the level of Chachma, that Chachma is blessed from the worlds above it, from the level of Keter. Makor bracha, it is the source of all blessings. Hainu reish tevis boruch, that's the words boruch. Boruch is beit reish vav chaf. Reish is rosh, vav umakor, and the source, all blessings. Okay, so really both of these aspects of God's Chachma and God's Malchut, the highest aspect of God's personality, the lowest aspect of God's personality, both of them receive blessings from what's above, and they give blessings to what's below. They blessings what's below. So generally we can say that Chachma, God's Chachma is wisdom. That's the source, that's the top, that's the source of all the blessings, even though it receives from what's above it. And that Malchut, that receives, that's the one that really receives from Chachma, from above. Okay, like como bricha, like a pool of water is called a bricha, that it draws mamshechim, that you can pull out from it water to anyone. Ella, but shabricha, that the bricha is that it drew down already from what's above it. That's what's called boruch, makar abracha, that's the source of all blessings. Like it says in the Zohar, iyu boruch, iyu bracha. It is blessed and it gives blessings. Plus, iu malchut, that malchut, the lowest aspect of God, is called bracha, is called giving out blessings. This fills the world. Malchutcha, malchut chalmi. Iu hainu yesod abba, and that he receives the blessings from what's above. That's called boruch, because it is the source that gives blessing into mamalik halmim. Okay, so what have we explained? What have we explained up to now? God is very dynamic. That's what it means, a living God. God is very dynamic. God really cares about this world. And God is constantly bringing blessings into this world. But the source of these blessings receives from what's above it. So life force is always pouring down and being received by the lower level. And also the lower level, then it gives down to a level which is even below it. Okay, so this is all talking about how God fills the worlds. He fills the worlds. There's life pouring into the worlds from one level to the other. One level receives and it pours down to the level which is below it. But above Chachma, above the highest of the 10 Sfirot, it can't come to be Mamalik Holmin. This is the aspect of God that surrounds all the worlds. This is how God is called Kodesh, holy. Because this aspect of God that's holy cannot come and be revealed at all into the world at all. Rakshu soviv umakiv haraso zorachas behelim. But what? It does have an effect on the world, but it's in a concealed way. And this we're going to talk about, God willing, tomorrow. It's going to come down to what we're proceeding over here is talking about what the Torah, how the Torah fits into this. And how the rabbis who learned the Torah devoted themselves totally. They had the power to do these amazing miracles. They could draw down from the Soviv Kolmim, the holy aspect of God, which is above the world, into the world, because that's what God wants. That's what God wants. I mean, really, we can't do anything. We're just creations. How can we, it's like Donald Duck telling Walt Disney what to do. We're being created by God all the time. It's not such a good example, but it's the best I could think of. How can we tell God what to do? We're deciding in the upper worlds what's going on. So it's because that's what God wants. That's how God set up the world. As I said before, if we look at the Judaism as a religion, then the whole business is sort of like, oh, come on, really? I mean, what do you do? It doesn't really make any sense. What's different from Judaism from anything else? But Judaism is saying no. Judaism is saying that this physical world is infinite. This physical world is where God really wants to be. All the upper worlds are just stages, are just levels coming into this world. It's almost like if you had a person and he didn't have any skin. He didn't have any skin. He couldn't talk or anything, but he had everything inside was working. His brain was working and his endocrine system everything was working. He said, right, I want you to meet my father. Woo, right? Look, his heart is beating and all the inner aspects are going. They're working. But it's just that it doesn't come out. Right? It's the same thing. All the spiritual worlds, that's the insides, the inner organs of God. All the spiritual levels that are going on inside of your body, right? Your nervous system and your the consciousness and all these things that's all the inside. But the main thing is the person, or what he actually does. The same thing as this world. This world is the final reality of God. God. If you think that God is spiritual, you miss the point, right? This world really tells you what God is, but not on face value. You have to look deeper into the world, which is true about anything. It's true about anything. If you see anything at face value, then you've missed the point. You look at people like they're objects. Then you're not a human being. You've missed. You don't think anybody's human, right? You look at money like it's just hoarding money. Money is not a goal. Money is a means to do something good with. Supposed to do something good. If you look at the world in a deeper way, then why are we here? What's here? Then suddenly you start to realize that, hey, it's God is creating the world. He's not creating it by accident. This world is tremendously important to God. That we have free will. This is an amazing miracle. And our free will actually has an effect on God because the world is infinitely important to God. There's nothing before this world. Every detail of this world is infinite. What comes after this world means that we'll reveal what really is in this. All the souls in heaven will come down to this physical world. So every instant of this world is infinitely, infinitely important, and we don't see it. I also don't see it, but the Rebbe's do see it. And how this means, how it can possibly be, we'll try at least to get into it. One person feels it. He feels that, don't worry, we're in good hands. And what we do is very important. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's do the Dvar Malchut.